Welcome to Kolme Group's Clarizen Function in a Flash, where each episode we introduce you to a new Clarizen function and show you how to use it. Hi, I'm Kim Messenger, one of the founding partners of Kolme Group. I'm a certified PMP, and I've been working with Clarizen since about 2015.
And my name is Kyle Moynihan. I'm also a certified PMP and an MBA in international business. I've run projects all over the world. I'm fluent in French, Spanish, and Clarizen, and I love teaching others all three of these languages.
Great, Kyle. What are we going to cover today?
Today, we are going to be talking about DateAdd.
Yay, DateAdd. What does DateAdd do?
DateAdd returns a date in Clarizen that takes into consideration adding duration to a date currently in the system. So if you look at the syntax, you have DateAdd parentheses. The first parameter is a date field, and the second parameter is a duration. And if you look at the examples below, you can see that duration can be either in terms of a duration field in Clarizen or a duration function such as days.
Right. And duration, if you're not aware, is a special field type in Clarizen, which matches it's like 1 hour, 15 minutes, or 3 weeks, something like that.
One thing that we'll point out, although we'll talk about it more in other videos, is you'll see here in our days function, I have 5, as in 5 days, and true. Basically, this second parameter of this function is whether or not we are taking into consideration working days. And if it's true, it means yes, we're counting working days. If it's false, then it is taking into consideration calendar days.
Right. And so when we look at this DateAdd function, we've got this concept of duration. And when you talk about duration in a Clarizen context, it's duration in working time. So if I say my duration is 40 hours, that could be a week. That's typically a week in calendar days because a typical working week is 40 hours in working duration. There are ways you can manipulate that using this function. So if down at the bottom example, I've got days 5 and true indicates this function is saying that those are working hours. If I say days are 5 false, then it's going to be 5 calendar days, not working days. So there are ways to work around it, but generally the way DateAdd works is it's working duration, because I want to say, okay, if I'm going to add 5 hours of effort to this project, what does that do to me in terms of duration on that?
Exactly. So a couple things to remember about this function is that the duration segment of the syntax is a duration field or field of type duration, or as we mentioned, a function of type duration, such as hours, days, weeks, and years. Another thing to keep in mind is that that which is returned is also a date time field. And let me show you what I mean by that. If we go into Clarizen, I have a DateAdd example set up here. So here we have the date, and then here we have days. As this is a duration field, I do need to select the duration type that I'm looking for.
Right. And your custom action there says days, but really it's any kind of a duration you'd put in here, right?
Exactly. Hit OK. Now we see up top, it's returning the date. And down here, it's actually returning a date time field. That's because this first one I've actually modified through some sort of advanced configurations to just give me the date, but what it will return naturally without the advanced modifications I made is the date time.
Right. And anywhere in Clarizen that you're storing a date, you're actually storing a date time. And the reason for this is that Clarizen supports a global enterprise. And so today for me might be another day for you if you're on my team and you're using my same Clarizen instance, but you live in Australia, New Zealand. And so if you start to see results where things are 1 day off, you should probably start looking at your time zones and really just be aware that we're looking at date times, not just a simple date field.
If we look down here below, I'll show you a more realistic example of how we might see DateAdd used in Clarizen. So here I have a due date, and that's November 25th. And I have a contingency end date with a hard-coded buffer. So if we take a look at the configuration for this field, we'll see I have DateAdd, the due date, days, 7 working days, because it's true.
I see. So what you're saying with this field is the scheduled date might be on a certain date, but my contingency end date is I'm always going to give myself 5 working days or 7 working days of buffer after that due date to say that's probably more realistic for a due date.
Correct. So if we look over here, contingency end date, this is a function. If we look at this function for this field, we have DateAdd, due date, and then this field, the contingency buffer, which we can change. It's not hard coded. We go back here. Right now we have 0 days, but if we put in 7 days, like what we had in the hard coded, we see the result is now the same.
All right.
A couple things to remember when using DateAdd is, as mentioned previously, make sure you pay close attention to how you are inputting the duration you're adding. Duration takes into account working days or hours.
Right. I almost think they should call this function duration add, really, even though because you're always adding a duration to a date.
Exactly. And if you put a negative number in the second parameter, the arithmetic will work in reverse.
Right. So in our examples here, you added a duration, but you could also make that a negative duration and work backwards from a certain date. So if I need to work backwards, say 5 days from a due date and figure out what date that is, I could just put a negative in front of my duration.
Exactly. An important thing to remember about this one is you'll see in one of our other videos, date subtract. The syntax of that function is a little bit different in that it's taking 2 date fields and subtracting one from the other. However, if what you need to do is subtract a duration from a date, you don't use date subtract, you use DateAdd with a negative duration. And that's DateAdd.
All right. If you have questions on this function, you can hit us up on our website at kolmegroup.com, and we'll be happy to help you out.
If you found this useful and you are really ready to take your Clarizen skills to the next level, check out the link below for Kolme University or reach out for individual consulting and training for you and your organization.